Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all having a great day so far. So in this video we will be creating a huge modern family home within the Sims 4, and I'm actually really excited to show this one to you guys in particular, mainly because I just really love the end result of this home. I just feel like that exterior looks super interesting and really appealing, and I feel like it's kind of just like a cool home to build and like play in, mainly because I just feel like it's sort of just like a nice mixture of like a huge home but it not being too big, if that makes sense. You'll sort of get what I mean as we progress later in the video, because like a lot of the furniture within the home was sort of like really close to each other. There's not really a lot of empty space, if that makes sense. So yeah, it just feels like really cozy and really homey, and I feel like a lot of Sims players do actually kind of prefer that in comparison to a lot of these like modern huge mega mansions that I really love building. But I just feel like a lot of people sort of focus on that gameplay wise, and I feel like that kind of makes sense. So yeah, I'm just trying to cater towards that and just like trying to create the mixture of that, sort of just like trying to create something that looks really huge and magnificent while also trying to maintain that sort of playability, if that makes sense. And although I do really love the appeal and like look of these huge modern mansions, I still feel like I want to also make them really playable as well. So yeah, I feel like this is like the perfect combination of that sort of goal that I was trying to go for. And looking at the current shape of the home, we don't really extend anything more than what we see on the screen right now, besides like adding the roofing and the second floor and whatnot. But I feel like this is like the perfect size to sort of just like house pretty much a legacy family that you're trying to like play in, or if you just want to like go and see what it looks like inside and whatnot. I did add quite a lot of detail throughout all of the bedrooms and whatnot and the main rooms of the home. So if you guys also do like sort of just like viewing them and looking at them, I do also have a tour towards the end of the video that you can definitely check out if you are more interested in like the visual and like design aspect of the home rather than actually playing inside of it, which is kind of just like my main goal and focus when I love creating my builds and whatnot. I sort of just like focus on that main exterior design and look of it rather than actual like, you know, how big or like how small it is, if that makes sense. But yeah, this house definitely does incorporate both of those elements into it, which is the main reason why I just really love this home in particular. And I was actually really inspired by a real life house when I was building this, but it's not an exact replica, mainly because that entire back garden area is sort of just like completely different to what you would actually see in real life. It's sort of just like a personal, like unique take. It's sort of just like two different houses mixed into one, and I just really loved how it turned out, mainly because we were trying to go for that really modern exterior look for the front area of the home, but the back is just like ultra modern, and it just like has this very nice mixture between the two of those sort of designs and themes, which I feel like look really nice. And you guys can also let me know what you guys think about this build in the comment sections below. I would really love to know your thoughts and suggestions, mainly because I just really love receiving feedback and just see like what you guys like and what you guys prefer and whatnot. But overall, I just really love building these like huge modern homes for you guys. And yeah, I did actually skip most of the roofing, mainly because I just felt like it's a bit too time consuming, and I feel like most of you guys who are probably watching this aren't really here to see the roofing, and I feel like a lot of you guys don't really like roofing, especially when it comes to like building your own homes or whatnot. So yeah, I don't really want to put you guys through that and just like watch me build and just like trial and error a bunch of like roof designs and whatnot. And yeah, so I just feel like it wasn't really that interesting to sort of watch me trial and error a bunch of different roofing designs and styles and whatnot, just to like try to get the home right, especially since we have that sort of really interesting looking shaped sort of diagonal area of the home, which has a lot of these like areas that sort of poke out and whatnot. And building roofs on top of like a normal square home is already difficult enough, so when I incorporated that additional diagonal area, it was just adding to the complexity of the roofing. But overall, I just feel like it turned out really nice, and it had that really interesting shape on the roofing, which I feel like looks really enticing overall. And you can pretty much see the entire home was already finished at this point of the video. We pretty much have the entire shell pretty much like laid out, as well as like the roofing and whatnot. And I went with this very nice metal roofing throughout the entire home, which I feel like looks super interesting. I just feel like it has like these very nice appealing lines, and I was also trying to obviously experiment with other roofing styles and textures as well, but I just overall just like felt like this one felt the most appropriate for this home in particular. And especially since I was like going off of based off of a real home, I also wanted to incorporate certain elements from that house as well, obviously not just by like replicating it one to one, but rather just like sort of just like getting some ideas and inspiration off of it as well. And this is actually the exact same roofing that I actually utilized in my previous build as well. And if you are a new viewer of the channel, I do also recommend you guys check out my other additional mansions and houses and stuff that I have on the channel if you guys are interested in these sort of things. And yeah, so I also utilize these very nice snowy escape sliding doors, which are just really big, and I just feel like they kind of work really nicely when it comes to creating these sort of fake garage doors areas. And I actually elevated the floor onto a foundation, mainly because we do actually end up altering the terrain as well to sort of match that foundation layer, so you don't actually have to utilize the stairs and whatnot for the back garden areas, mainly on like the same terrain spot. But the main reason why I actually did this was because I just felt like it looked really interesting to have that sort of slope that led towards the garage rather than having like a very flat sort of design, if that makes sense. So yeah, having a garageway that was sort of elevated made it look a bit more dynamic and interesting in my opinion. And by doing this as well, your Sims wouldn't automatically use those doors as like sort of front entrances for the home, if that makes sense, because it's on an elevated foundation. And yeah, so that was sort of just like a cosmetic look that I felt like looked really nice for the exterior of the home, especially because with most of my homes I try to go for a more realistic appeal, which is the main reason why I sort of just like incorporating these realistic elements such as like a garage and driveway and whatnot. And then we also have this very interesting looking curved incorporation of soil terrain paint throughout the entire home, which makes it look really interesting and dynamic. And we do also eventually populate all of those areas with a lot of greenery and plants and stuff like that as well later on in the video. But yeah, moving on into actually creating and making the house feel a bit more lively just by adding a lot more of the windows and the doors and whatnot. I just feel like it turned out really nice to incorporate these very simple looking glass windows, which actually is a mixture of some of the base game glass windows that we got recently in the new update, as well as like the windows that we got from the businesses and hobbies expansion pack, which came out recently. And I just really love utilizing both of them at the same time because I feel like they sort of made them match in certain ways, I guess. And I just feel like they work really nicely when I'm trying to create these modern homes, especially since the most recent update actually came with these very huge sliding doors, which you could pretty much see I actually utilized throughout the entire back garden area, which we actually utilized 4 of them overall. And I just feel like it was just like the perfect way to sort of just like utilize them in this garden in particular, especially since we're going for that more modern appeal and take. I really wanted to have these like very open natural lights and a lot of like these glass doors and like floor to ceiling glass windows and whatnot. But yeah, I also tried to incorporate a very interesting sort of like outdoor fireplace area for the center of the back garden home, which has this very huge sort of chimney that sort of pokes out from the main sort of roofing area of the home as well, which I feel like looked really interesting, but it just wasn't really working out. Even once I utilized the Desert Lux kit's sort of like outdoor fireplace thing, it still didn't really work out that nicely. So instead I just resorted to utilizing an indoor sort of fireplace on the outdoors, which I feel like didn't really look that bad in my opinion, to be honest. So instead I just ended up keeping it like that, and I was pretty much happy with how it turned out. And I actually wanted to incorporate a swimming pool into this home as well, mainly because I just feel like for a huge home like this, I feel like, especially with all that empty space that we had on that side of the home, I feel like it kind of made sense to sort of incorporate a nice sort of swimming pool, which has that sort of infinity edge like design. It's not really that infinity edge, but I just really like how it sort of just like was raised from the regular terrain level, if that makes sense, which sort of just like added to the dynamicness of this home and made it look a bit more interesting. And here we actually have these very nice sort of like black boxes, which are actually pretty much like planters for the home, for the back garden area, which I feel like looked really interesting. And I actually just utilized a very nice sort of sand texture for the center of it, of each of the planters, and just added some like very nice sort of like small plant details within it, which I feel like made it look really nice and luxurious. And I just really love how this garden in particular turned out, because the main focal point is usually the swimming pool, but rather I just like turned it to the side and sort of just like created like some sort of courtyard area for the home, if that makes sense, which is sort of just like enclosed throughout the entire home, which sort of just like makes it feel like an oasis as well. I just feel like it's kind of just like a nice unique take on creating a modern and futuristic looking garden, if that makes sense. And yeah, we just added some plants here and there around like the sides of the home, which I feel like just made it look a bit more busy and whatnot. I could have left it empty, but I just wanted to add some additional details here and there just to make it feel a bit more full and lively, if that makes sense. And we do also add a bunch more plants and pottery and a lot of trees around the home later on in the video as well. So yeah, it doesn't actually stay bare like that throughout the entire build process. I do actually end up skipping quite a lot of the tree additions and like the plant additions and whatnot, because it was just getting a bit too long, and I just feel like it wasn't really that interesting to watch me place a bunch of plants and trees. But yeah, moving on into the actual furniture pieces that we're actually adding into the garden area, I actually utilize this 3x1 sofa, which I believe is more utilized for the interiors, but I feel like it kind of was just like a nice take to incorporate that for the exterior of the home, just for this build in particular. I just feel like it looked really nice and cozy. And I also utilize these very nice simple white wicker outdoor single armchair sort of seaters on either side to make it look a bit more interesting. And we do actually have a main color scheme throughout this entire home, which is sort of just like gold brass color, which comes from certain objects such as like that pot that we see on the exterior of the garden, as well as like these sort of like small proofs that I placed on either side, which is sort of just like fake coffee table or like side tables, if that makes sense, which I feel like turned out really nice in my opinion. And we do also obviously add some additional sun lounges around the pool area as well, and we do actually end up changing the pool area to the one that came from the get together expansion pack, because I just really love that bright sort of fake pool sort of color design that it has from that specific swatch. But the base game one looks pretty nice as well if you guys don't have get together. But yeah, moving on into adding the foliage and the greenery for the front area of the home as well. I just really love how this turned out as well, because it didn't really look that busy, but it still had quite a lot of greenery going on throughout it. And if you guys couldn't really get a good peek of what it actually looked like, you'll be able to see it throughout the tour as well as like on the screenshots towards the end of the video, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And yeah, so moving on into the interior of the home now, we're actually starting off by decorating the main hallway area of the home, which has this very nice unique feature of where the front door of the home actually meets the back garden sliding doors, which I feel like is kind of just like a nice way to view the home and the back garden straight as you walk into the home, which I feel like is kind of just like a nice and unique take. And on one side of the hallway, we actually have this very interesting looking sort of double-sided fireplace, which I just really love the utilization of, just like utilizing the same fireplace on either side. I feel like it kind of looks really interesting. I really wish we had something that went right between the walls, such as like a glass fireplace. I feel like it would look really interesting. And I was really puzzled with what kind of sofa I wanted to utilize for this main sort of living space of the home, but instead I just went for these 3-seaters, which I feel like looked really nice and simple and sort of fit the theme that I was trying to go for this home in particular. And you will actually see quite a lot of accent walls, as you can see on that fireplace in particular. We kind of have this like rocky design and texture for the wallpaper, and we do actually have the exact same design for the exterior of the home in certain areas of the home, such as like the fireplaces and whatnot. But yeah, I just feel like it just like breaks up the sort of illusion of this very plain and white simple wall that we have going on throughout the entire home. And we do also have this very nice simple beige sort of timber flooring, wooden flooring panels that we have, which came from the Eco Lifestyle expansion pack, and it's pretty much my go-to flooring when it comes to creating these like modern homes, which I want to incorporate a lot of wooden textures and features in, if that makes sense. And I just really love how this coffee table turned out in particular for this living space. It just feels super busy and realistic, especially with like the books and the candles and the trays which incorporate additional candles and whatnot. I feel like it looks really nice and interesting. And I did of course utilize move objects as well throughout this entire build as well. And I actually noticed that a few people do actually have issues when placing homes that actually utilize the move object cheat. But regardless of whoever you're downloading builds from, I highly recommend you guys do turn on the move objects cheat on before you actually place the build, because I believe it does cause issues if you guys don't have that cheat on. I personally never had that issue, but I've just heard people that do actually have that issue on TikTok. So yeah, I just feel like it was quite an important thing to mention to you guys. If you guys are actually facing any issues or whatnot, always turn on the cheats before actually placing the builds in order to avoid any issues with like object placements and whatnot. But yeah, moving on into the dining area, which is right next to the sort of living space area, but it's sort of just like divided by that singular wall where the kitchen will be later on. But I just really love how sort of cozy this home looks and feels. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, how like everything sort of was like kind of together, like there wasn't really a lot of empty space throughout the entire home. And this was sort of just like the main thing that I was talking about. Like there's not really a lot of space throughout the entire home that looks really bare or empty or like uninteresting, if that makes sense. And it just feels like there's just like quite a lot of things going on, if that makes sense. And I just really love how I actually utilize those floating cabinet units and just like place some sort of like candles on it, as well as like some nice plants and stuff on it and whatnot, as well as like utilizing that very huge sort of oversized painting on that wall, which I feel like looks really extravagant. And I feel like it kind of makes sense to place that in like a very modern home like this. And we do of course go back to the living space and just like add a very unique and interesting looking rug, which I actually never utilize in any of my builds because I kind of go for like this more minimalistic simple colors. But for this one I felt like I wanted to just like utilize a bit more color with it throughout this entire build. So yeah, I just felt like it was kind of like a nice change to incorporate that sort of orangey reddish dark blue sort of colors throughout the entire rug, which is actually present on pretty much all of the paintings that you will see throughout the home as well, which I feel like looked super interesting overall. But yeah, moving on into the kitchen area now. This section of the kitchen houses the sort of fridge area, as well as like that very nice sort of coffee station. And I really love utilizing the really tall wall heights to just like actually get the full use out of those floor to ceiling sort of cabinetry, which came from the Dream Home Decorator game pack, which I just really love utilizing throughout pretty much all of my kitchens and builds. It's just like the main go-to, it's like the main go-to object that I pretty much use throughout all of my modern homes. And for this kitchen in particular, we actually went for the island living counters and the island living counter pieces, because I just really love that waterfall edge that comes with it, and I just felt like it was kind of just like a nice change to utilize. It's very nice dark brown for the main cabinets, if that makes sense, while also incorporating that very nice simple white countertop throughout the home as well. And I just really love this huge sort of like stovetop sort of smoke fan which we have going on throughout the main sort of like stovetop areas, which I feel like looks really interesting. And despite the home not really being that oversized and huge, I still incorporated this sort of like back end area, which is sort of just like they usually call it like the butler's kitchen, but I feel like for this home it's not really that big in order for it to be classified for that. It's sort of just like a double kitchen, I guess, which houses like additional stuff, if that makes sense, like maybe like some additional functionalities if you guys wanted to add like some ice cream features, or if you wanted to add like the popcorn machine or whatnot, rather than having it cluttering the front area of the kitchen, if that makes sense. But yeah, moving on into the laundry room now, I actually went with quite a more minimalistic sort of color scheme for this entire laundry room, which is not really what I usually do. I sort of just like love utilizing that sort of baby blue color throughout most of my laundry rooms, or just like incorporating color in general. But for this one in particular, I sort of just like went with a more muted sort of light grayish whitish color, which I feel like turned out really nice. It sort of just like muted the other colors that we have going on throughout the entire home. And right onto the right hand side of that sort of laundry room area, we actually have this very huge sort of office space, which I just really love how this room in particular turned out, mainly because I just really love how modern and minimalistic this office turned out to be, because I was able to utilize most of my favorite objects which came from the Life and Death expansion pack, as well as like from Dream Home Decorator, as well as like the most recent refined living room kit, which has this very nice modern and minimalistic features, which I feel like I really love utilizing throughout most of my builds, especially since I do really go for that modern theme that I'm trying to sort of just like get throughout most of my builds and whatnot. And I just really love having this like nice sort of like formal seating area that we have right in front of the desk area. I just feel like that is sort of just like a very fancy and modern office design sort of thing that a lot of real offices have, if that makes sense. So I just really love incorporating that specific design throughout most of my offices in the game as well. And yeah, I just really love how this room in particular turned out, and I just really love the utilization of those double glass sliding doors right in the center of where the office space is, which sort of leaves direct access into the garden, which sort of gives that indoor outdoor feel, which most of the sort of courtyard garden area of the home houses. It's like very huge sliding doors and just like a bunch of doors throughout the entire home, which sort of just like makes it feel a bit more like interesting in my opinion. And then I also wanted to incorporate some additional sort of clutter furniture pieces for the main hallway of the home as well, just like adding a simple rug, as well as like adding a sort of like simple coat rag, as well as like adding some additional sort of simple functionality items such as like the alarms and the thermostat, as well as like a fire alarm in the kitchen as well. But yeah, moving on into the main bedroom of this entire home, this is pretty much classified as like the master bedroom of this home in particular, which is actually placed on the first floor, which is kind of just like an interesting take, because I usually love creating my master bedrooms or primary bedrooms on the second floor, but I felt like since we had a lot of space on the first floor, I felt like it kind of made sense to place it on the first floor. And we have this very huge, nice and simple open seating place built in within the actual like bedroom area, which I feel like makes it feel super fancy and extravagant, especially with those floor to ceiling wall heights that we have going on throughout the entire home. I just feel like it makes this room in particular just feel really grand and just like very extravagant. And this is actually one of the new beds which came from the Businesses and Hobbies expansion pack, which I feel like looks super nice and interesting. And initially I was going for a more dull color scheme, which had this like very nice like white simple beige color and whatnot, but I just feel like we really needed to incorporate some color within this room. So instead I actually went with this like more dark blue swatch, and the bed itself does actually have this very nice sort of dark brown blanket going across the edge of it, which I feel like looks really interesting and actually matches the painting frame itself, which sort of just like adds to the cohesiveness of the room overall. And I also incorporated a very nice sort of love seat, which also matched the rest of the seating areas that we had throughout this entire bedroom itself as well, which I feel like looked really interesting. And I also incorporated the very nice sort of lit up mirrors that we got from the businesses and hobbies expansion pack as well. And since that wall was looking a bit bland and it was sort of just like poking out from the rest of the walls, I feel like it was kind of like a good idea to sort of just like create an accent wall piece for that certain area of the home, if that makes sense, which I feel like turned out really nice and made the home feel a bit more dynamic, especially since it was matching the rest of the dark blue colors that we had going on throughout the entire bedroom itself. I feel like it was kind of an interesting take. But yeah, so moving on into the sort of bathroom area, which actually leads to the his and hers wardrobe sections. I actually wanted to create this mainly because I feel like it was kind of just like, it felt realistic in my opinion, and it was kind of just like a nice cool sort of design for the home, which is the main reason why I sort of just like did this. But if you guys don't really like this sort of his and hers sort of situation, you could just like remove it and change it up and do whatever you guys like to. But I sort of just like went for a more realistic approach just by like creating these his and hers sections and stuff and whatnot. So yeah, we just have like small sort of like rooms that sort of connect from the main bathroom area, which is sort of just like housing the walk-in wardrobe modular pieces which came from the Dream Home Decorator game pack. But yeah, moving on into the main area of the bathroom, we actually have this very nice sort of like double synced unit area which is looking out opposite those very huge double sliding doors that we have that lead straight into the garden area, which is where the sort of like swimming pool area is. And I actually wanted to utilize this very modern looking bathtub which actually came from the businesses and hobbies expansion pack, because I just really love how modern and fancy it looks. And I actually placed it right where the sort of sliding door was, but to the point where the door as well as the bathtub was still functional, because I just felt like it looked super modern and extravagant to just like place it right in the center where the sort of like windows were, if that makes sense. And regarding the area which housed that toilet space, I just felt like it looked a little bit too bare for such a modern and luxurious bathroom that I was trying to go for. So instead I actually just utilized these modular sort of counter sort of cabinet pieces and placed the toilet in front of it to pretend as if it was some sort of like storage unit place and whatnot. And I also incorporated some additional sort of accent walls throughout the entire bathroom area just to make it feel a bit more luxurious, just trying to make it sort of like set a vibe to it and a theme to it, just like trying to create some like candle trays and stuff around the areas, trying to create some like mood lighting rather than always utilizing the saucer lights, and just like trying to place a painting right above it which is sort of just like lit up from that sort of spotlight, which made it look a bit more interesting, while also incorporating some additional sort of sconce lights throughout the entire bathroom, as well as like some small clutter pieces such as like a laundry basket. But yeah, so moving on into the hers section of the wardrobe, it sort of has this very unique shape to it, mainly because we were sort of focusing on that diagonal area of the home, and I wasn't really trying to waste any of the space that we had, mainly because we were already limited from the start anyway. So I was trying to utilize as much of it possible. And since you can't really utilize a lot of these smaller rooms for anything else, I just felt like it kind of made sense to utilize it into a hers section wardrobe instead. But yeah, so moving on into the gym area now, and I'm actually quite happy that the space is relatively small, mainly because when it comes to building gyms within the Sims 4, there's not really a lot of these functional gym equipment or object pieces that we can actually utilize besides the main two object pieces. So I feel like it kind of made sense to utilize it in a smaller room and just like add some additional sort of small clutters here and there, utilizing some additional sort of like floor to ceiling sort of glass mirrors just to make it feel a bit more realistic, as if it was like an actual built-in gym, and just like adding that very nice simple dumbbell rack which came from the Love Struck expansion pack, which I feel like I wish it was functional, just to like add some additional like creativity and functionality into the game, but unfortunately it isn't. But I still wanted to incorporate it just to make it feel a bit more busy and as if it was like a realistic gym. But yeah, moving on into the upstairs of this home now, we're actually starting off with the nursery. So there's actually quite a spacious nursery that we have going on for this build in particular. So if you guys do actually plan to play in this build and want to incorporate some additional nurseries or have a bunch of like infants and children or whatnot, I feel like it's definitely easy to just like add some additional sort of nursery cribs and like beds into this room in particular, or the ones right next to it as well, because they are relatively spacious. And we do also have an ensuite that leads from this nursery straight into there, so you can also just like renovate that into a different nursery if you guys are planning to incorporate more than one baby within this build. But yeah, since we had quite a lot of space to work with within this nursery in particular, I feel like it kind of gave me the opportunity to just add a bunch more objects and functionality objects throughout this entire room in particular, such as like adding that huge sort of dollhouse sort of functional object, which I feel like I'm never really able to utilize throughout my nurseries, because I feel like I create them in a little small space, or I just don't really have a lot of like movable space to like realistic place it in to make it actually feel like a normal room, if that makes sense. I was even confident to the point where I actually wanted to place a slide, but I just felt like that was a bit too much. It was a bit too big. I don't really mind having a really cluttered sort of nursery because I feel like it's more realistic to have a more busy and messy looking nursery, but overall I just feel like it still looked really nice with the overall sort of clutter that I incorporated within it. And yeah, so moving on into the final bedroom that we have on the second floor now, which is actually the bedroom that has this very huge sort of balcony space which leads out towards the front area of the home, which also has windows facing towards the back garden area of the home, which I feel like looks really interesting and extravagant. And in case you are actually wondering, these aren't actually the only bedrooms that we have throughout the entire home. There's a few of them that I haven't been able to show throughout the speed build, mainly because I feel like it'd just be a bit too time consuming. So if you guys do want to see them and are quite interested in seeing what they actually turned out and look like, I highly recommend you guys stick towards the end of the video if you guys are interested to see the tour, so you guys can pretty much like get a floor plan view and idea of what the home really looks like, and so you can actually see the rooms and builds that I haven't actually shown in the speed build in itself, if that makes sense. And since we had quite a lot of space within this bedroom in itself, I feel like it kind of made sense to incorporate a very nice sort of living space within this bedroom in itself, but I couldn't really like incorporate a lot of seating area, so instead I just incorporated a very nice simple poof as well as like a nice two-seater off to the side, which I feel like made it feel cozy enough. And yeah, I just also incorporated a very nice simple dresser for this bedroom in particular, as well as like changing some of the accent walls and utilizing some of the new wooden wall paneled walls just to like make it feel a bit more extravagant and unique, if that makes sense. But yeah, moving on into the sort of front balcony area of this sort of bedroom in itself, we actually utilize these very nice simple sconces which came from the Growing Together expansion pack, as well as utilizing some of my all-time favorite garden furniture pieces, which is sort of just like this very nice sort of wicker outdoor furniture piece set, which I feel like works really nice with this fireplace coffee table, which I feel like looks super cozy and really nice to like sort of have in a very luxurious home like this, in my opinion. And yeah, moving on into the ensuite for this bedroom in particular, I just feel like we had quite a lot of space to the point where I feel like it kind of made sense to sort of have a double sink unit area, if that makes sense, along with creating that very nice unique design which I really love incorporating in most of my bathrooms, which is just by like utilizing those kitchen sort of thin cabinetry wall units as like some sort of like storage units under the sinks, which I feel like makes it look really luxurious and modern, and is one of my favorite design pieces that I sort of came up with and actually created. And we did also utilize quite a few of the modern furniture pieces which came from the Life and Death expansion pack as well, such as like that bathtub, the shower, as well as like that single standing sort of storage unit area which has that very nice sort of like bath towels and whatnot, which sort of adds to the realism that we're trying to go for this home in particular. And then once I was pretty much finished with this entire ensuite area for this bedroom in particular, I just went around the entire home just adding some additional furniture pieces which I felt like was kind of necessary to incorporate throughout the entire home, just to make sure no area of the home felt bare or whatnot. So yeah, especially incorporating a very nice sort of like nice seating area for the top level of this home in particular in itself. And then I just went around the entire home and the exterior, just like adding some additional plants and foliage, as well as like adding some additional rocks and trees to make it feel a bit more realistic and lived in. And yeah, that was pretty much it for this entire speed build. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think by leaving a like and subscribing, and comment down below if you guys have any thoughts and suggestions. I'd love to know your views and what you guys think about this home in particular. And I do also have a bunch more videos like this on the channel if you guys are interested. But yeah, thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.